The historic city of Boston, Massachusetts in New England will be one of the many places to be this summer for the 2026 FIFA World Cup as Boston gets ready to welcome some of the biggest names in the world of football, including Didier Deschamps and France. We know that France enter the World Cup as one of the favorites, and it just so happens that they were in action today at Gillette Stadium, normally the home of the New England Revolution. Today it was the home of Brazil as they took on the French. And welcome everyone to a fresh edition of Futbol Americas. I'm Alexis Nunes alongside my boy Shaka Hislop. Shaka, these are your ends over here. Your very cold ends, might I add. But we are here because we just witnessed what was a very exciting game between two massive heavyweights in the football world. Brazil versus France. We're going to break that down in just a little bit, but we still have plenty more coming your way, including not one, not even two, but three exclusive interviews from the U.S. men's national team camp ahead of what will be a very interesting matchup for them against Belgium, and then they will get ready to play against Portugal. But that we're going to save for later. Right now, let's talk about the match that we just saw. Shaka, France up against Brazil. It was the French that probably wouldn't surprise many who came out on top by 2-1. France reduced to 10 men at one point. Of course, France were the favorites heading into this one, Shaka, but I almost was hoping that the 90% full stadium in yellow shirts would have kind of inspired Brazil to something, but in the end, I mean, France is going to be France, right?
Yeah, it was. This is as close a home feeling for Brazil as you can get, and it's probably what you can expect all World Cup long, regardless of where they play. They came here expecting the best for their team, but France were just dominant, as you mentioned. Coming to this one as favourites, and they showed exactly why. Comfortable in taking a 1-0 lead, Kylian Mbappe with an outstanding finish, then Upamecano gets sent off, but even then, France's level does not drop. Their control of the ball does not drop. Their passing does not drop. Their willingness to pass out from the back it felt like it almost got better. And that led to the Hugo Ekitike goal, and build up from the back was just something to behold. And that just spoke to their dominance, even with 10 men. Later on in the game, yes, Brazil got one back and had some chances later on, but this was as good a France performance as you can see. For Didier Deschamps, kind of thinking that he's still got a few months ahead of the World Cup, still some fine-tuning to do. I think if you're on the outside looking at this France team, you're a little bit worried.
Now, of course, we're going to take this from the Brazilian perspective now because, I mean, we got to speak to Bebeto as well, the absolute legend that is, and I asked him if he thought, you know, that what Vinny Jr. said about how Brazil knows that this Brazil currently cannot be called favorites heading into this World Cup. And we know that that is the realistic standpoint. But we're talking about Brazil, Shaka. They absolutely thrive at the World Cup. Yeah, maybe not the last couple of editions, but if we ask everybody here in a yellow shirt that they want to kind of put themselves as fifth favorites going into this, even if they're trying to be honest, I don't think they're going to accept that. So now if you're Carlo Ancelotti, you just have the perfect measuring stick tonight in France, so one of the world's best. What do you think Carlo Ancelotti will be thinking going off after this performance, even if it's a friendly, and what he needs to work on?
Well, I think when you look at the Brazil starting lineup, especially at the back, it really felt like it needed a lot of additions to it. Now, it's a national team, so
Does that start with the goalkeeper, though?
Well, no, that's the thing. Edison couldn't do anything about the goals.
Yeah.
You know Edison and how good he is in terms of the distribution, and you saw that again today. Alisson would be the preferred number one, but he struggled with injuries all season long, so you can't rely on him to be fully fit and Brazil's first choice, automatic first choice. So right now, Edison has got to approach this international window as though he were going to play. See what comes of how Alisson fares, whether he's included to start with. But then you add to that a back four in front of him that's inexperienced, and then two defensive midfielders, including Casemiro, who Casemiro at his best, one of the best defensive midfielders this game has seen. But he's not that version. He's not the Real Madrid version of Casemiro that we know. And at this level, against this kind of opponent, that will get exposed. Now, Brazil, you could say, are top-heavy in terms of what their attacking power that they can call on. Vinicius Jr., Cunha, Rafinha, all will carry a heavy burden given what the rear guard looks like. Now, I thought what you saw today, and especially later on with Thiago, Luis Enrique coming on, there's still a misunderstanding, or not that perfect understanding between Vinicius Jr., who will be the kind of point man for this Brazil attack.
Does that come with time? Is it a chemistry thing that will come with time, you think, or?
Well, the easy answer is yes. The challenge is that
do they have time?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Brazil does not have a lot of time to get that right. And to your point, and well, credit Vinicius Jr. for being honest. They are not one of the favorites.
Yeah.
I can sit here and say that. But to your point, Alexis, nobody in the stadium, nobody on the beaches of Brazil are going to see this team as anything but one that can and should be winning the World Cup. Now, the expectation might not live up to the reality. That's always a challenge for this version of Brazilian football.
Yeah, let me tell you, Bebeto said he wasn't having it when I said that, look, are you guys going to accept that you probably aren't favorites going into this one? Another thing that I did ask him, of course, is something that we've talked about time and time again on the show. Who brings this X factor for Brazil? I mean, there was a time where they had so many X factors, whether it was Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, Fenomeno, Cafu, Roberto Carlos. They were just littered with people that, all you had to give the ball to them and they would change the game. We even saw that recently with Neymar, I suppose, in terms of this generation too. Neymar now, currently at the moment, I don't think any of us doubt that he probably won't be the Neymar Brazil needs.
Yeah.
So that begs the question, who brings that X factor? And of course, we're going to look to Vini Jr. I know we cannot just judge him off of this game here today, Shaka, but I felt like today was a huge stage for him to show and go up against people he's so used to as well on this French team. So in terms of being that X factor, do you think Vini showed enough that maybe they could be okay without Neymar?
Well, here's the challenge. Vinicius Jr. is the only X factor for Brazil. When you talk about the great Brazil teams, and you went through a list there, when you have that many talented players littered around the park, it becomes difficult to make a game plan to you nullify one, another's going to pop up. Now, Vinicius Jr., and while, again, talk about the names that are involved, Thiago coming off the bench, João Pedro involved, all good footballers, but not, to use your term, Alexis, X factors. So if I'm setting up as Didier Deschamps and I'm setting up my game plan, I'm focused on Vinicius Jr., and I trust the talent, one-on-one individual talent of the rest of my team to cope with everything as Brazil has. Because individual, one-on-one, pound for pound, France are better. Now, so you're asking Vinicius Jr. to be that difference maker. So you set your game plan around him, and after that, if you're able to nullify him, if you're able to limit his space, his opportunities to get the ball at his feet and run at defenders, you kind of quieten this Brazil team. Everything else just takes care of itself, especially when you're able to call on as talented players as Didier Deschamps with his France squad is.
We just casually have Hugo Ekitike walking behind us there. He definitely will be a handful. He was a handful for Brazil here today. But then we talk about that X factor, and again, we see one of France's X factors there too. It's funny that you say that if we're talking about X factor, there is only one X factor on this Brazil team, and that is Vini Jr. I would want to try throw Rafinha into that argument as well, but it's because I'm thinking of Rafinha in a Barcelona shirt and what he does. What did you think of him today?
Quiet, but for the most part, that's all of Brazil. Cunha had one effort in the first half when it was still 0-0, where maybe he should have done better with via hit the target. I thought Mannion would have had a problem. Outside of that, I can't think of a whole lot that he did either.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge here, that talented players, but at this level, good players, but not difference makers. And that's the issue. Rafinha has not been the Barcelona version in the yellow of Brazil. We've said that time and time again. And how Carlo Ancelotti unlocks that, that's going to be his challenge over the next couple of months.
If we go off of what we just saw today against France for Brazil, is this team still screaming for Neymar? And I'm talking about Neymar as we know now. Do they still just take the risk and take him? Because, as you said, it's just too much quiet for a Brazil team.
Yeah, so I'll give this as a yes and a no. When I saw Neymar last in a Brazil shirt, I thought Brazil don't need Neymar. He was past his best. They need to move on. But then you see this version of Brazil. You saw the version of Brazil in CONMEBOL qualifying, which actually I thought this version was better than the team in CONMEBOL qualifying. It screamed for somebody who understood the pressure and could carry the pressure of wearing a Brazil shirt. Neymar is that person.
Yeah.
Neymar understands what it means to be the focus, to be the attention grabber. He may not have the X factor in him as he once did anymore, but he understands the weight of this shirt. So that's a challenge here, because you bring Neymar as somebody who adds to the dressing room if he's not going to be playing a significant part during in the games during the tournament. Right now, I don't see Neymar playing a solid 90 minutes, a consistent 90 minutes. Dare I say, I don't see Neymar playing a consistent 60. Do you bring Neymar to bring him off the bench for the last half an hour? I'm not sure that works either. So it's a challenge for Carlo Ancelotti in deciding how he manages or what he does here, or how he finds that person, or maybe how he tweaks Vinicius Jr. For him to understand the pressure and what's needed of it.
Well, if you're Didier Deschamps, I mean, I think you're going to be sleeping quite peacefully tonight. Of course, France still have to play against some more South American opposition in Colombia, but we'll talk about that a bit later on. But if you're France now, and again, I know it's hard to go off of what we just saw, Shaka, but this is France, and what we saw from them today is no surprise, really and truly. In terms of where they will fall on your favorites heading into the World Cup, along the likes of the Spains, the Argentinas, even the Englands as well, because we had a moment when France was coming out to warm up, and we were just looking, our jaws hitting the floor at that attack, Shaka. When we talk about spoiled for choice, and then that attack then just led by a Kylian Mbappe, who we all know exactly what he can do, even when France doesn't have that deep of an attack. But where would they land on your favorites?
Well, the easy answer to that is they're in the top three alongside Spain and Argentina. I think without question, France are the deepest squad in the tournament. Probably the most talented is Spain. Yeah. And then Argentina, speaking about X factors.
They have one of the biggest in the world.
They have Lionel Messi, who's an X factor like this game has never seen before. So and coming in as defending champions, they will be needed to be reckoned with. Yeah. But right now, I think the best two teams coming into this World Cup are Spain and France. Maybe it comes down to injuries and the testing the depth of the respective squads, but I don't see the tournament going past either of those two. I feel it falls to one of them.
All right, well, just to switch things back a little bit to Brazil, and while we are here in the US of A, because it seems that a man that we just saw who happened to captain this Brazilian team now, he's already comfortable, I would say, on my club, Manchester United, Shaka, you know. But we do understand his time there is coming to an end. And now we are hearing that Casemiro has been linked with a move to MLS, to either Inter Miami or LA Galaxy. Those two seem to be the interested parties. Shaka, in terms of what MLS want to do and how they continue to progress him, especially these two clubs, LA Galaxy and Inter Miami, one, do you think it would be a great fit for them or for Casemiro as well?
Yes and yes. I think Casemiro continues to show that he's an outstanding footballer, and while I stood here and said he's not the Real Madrid version of Casemiro, he is still an incredible footballer.
He's still scoring goals for United.
Still scoring goals. Involved in the Brazil goal today as well. Nice little far post run that nobody picked up, and that understanding of the game is what differentiates Casemiro from mere mortals. And that's the thing. When you have a player who understands the game as well as a Casemiro does, and you're seeing it now with Manchester United, where now he knows that the end is nigh, he almost seems to be relaxed and playing arguably his best football for Manchester United. Now, I think he comes into MLS and does exactly the same. There's no question about that for me. He graces this league in a way that very few defensive midfielders can, because of his understanding of this game.
Well, we know there's a strong Brazilian community almost anywhere you go here in the U.S., so whether he does end up in California or in Florida, I'm pretty sure those Casemiro shirts will be flying off the shelves.